Let's not begin with a policy, but with a picture. A wheelbarrow trundling through the kitchen. She wheeled her wheelbarrow through streets broad and narrow, and groaning under the weight of legally owned firearms. This apparently is the reality of modern British politics. The farmer in question? Rupert Lowe. Rupert Lowe, Loki, Robert Lowe, Rob Lowe, Arthur Lowe, until recently the Reform UK MP for Great Yarmouth and the great hope for Elon Musk. The reason? Accusations of threats, a party split, and the kind of political backstabbing that would make Machiavelli blush. What follows is not just the story of Lowe's political exile, but a cautionary tale about the weaponization of party loyalty, the dangers of cults, and the absurd, because now he's escaped the cult, and the absurd, or almost I was going to say Shakespearean, but it's not. It's Miltonic descent from power in a wheelbarrow. And on a March evening, 3 police cars apparently and 4 armed officers descended on Rupert Lowe's house, not because he was a flight risk, but because he had barricaded himself inside. He hadn't, but because of an allegation. The allegation specifically a claim that Lowe had threatened Reform Chairman Zia Youssef. And Lowe had already agreed to hand over his guns, all legally held as part of his farming work, yet the police arrived regardless, and in his own words, the collection was so large they required a wheelbarrow. And this image, deeply rural, faintly comic, conceals a darker truth. For all his idiosyncrasies, and in fact I slightly warm to Rupert Lowe now, Rupert Lowe was not charged. The Crown Prosecution Service found no case to answer, no realistic prospect of conviction. But in politics, reputation matters more than reality, and Reform UK, once his home, had already cast him out. Now, the fact that he has criticised Farage and called Farage a cult leader, and the fact that I have reported this, doesn't mean that I now endorse Rupert Lowe. If that would mean anything to Rupert Lowe, it doesn't. I think Rupert Lowe is awful. But as I say, I warmed to him a little bit more because I rather like the idea of the guns in the wheelbarrow, and I like the idea of him as a working farmer. But it's not a toss-up between Farage or Rupert Lowe. You know, they're both soiled with reform. What happened to Rupert Lowe? In a word, Farage. Farage happened. And Lowe made the fatal mistake of criticising Farage during an interview, and he suggested that Reform UK was more of a protest movement than a party led by a self-styled messiah rather than a policymaker. So calling Farage now a cult leader is not really much more than calling him a messiah. In fact, it's rather downgrading him. Worse, he committed the heresy on the eve of an election, and Reform UK retaliated swiftly. Lowe was suspended, accused of bullying, and reported to the police. And the incident bears all the hallmarks of an internal purge, a sort of thing from the Soviet Union. Lowe called it a political assassination attempt. And whether one agrees or not, the result is clear. His career is in tatters, and Reform UK now appears not just authoritarian, but faintly ridiculous. A party so insecure it sent one of its few MPs to the scaffold of public disgrace for voicing doubt. One of the few MPs. It only had a handful. It only had 5. It sent one of those off into exile. Lowe's subsequent statements are more than just wounded pride. He's accused Farage of running a cult, a party with no structure, no politics, no policies, just a charismatic leader and a coterie of pub philosophers making it up as they go along. And he warned, if Farage were to gain real power, he would crush dissent, just as he's allegedly tried to crush Lowe. This isn't idle speculation, it's all documented in a pattern. Susan Evans, Douglas Carswell, now Rupert Lowe, they've all crossed Farage. They've all been excommunicated. I had my own little run-in. Yet voters appear unbothered. Reform UK has surged in the polls and local elections. So far, the average Briton seems to prefer slogans over structures, charisma over coherence. Well, why wouldn't you? So where does Lowe go now? He can't go back to reform, not without a grovelling apology and a bout of selective amnesia by everyone. The Conservatives might offer a lifeboat, but they may find his views on grooming gangs and Islam a little too forthright. The new party Integrity, founded by another Reform exile Ben Habib, beckons. Or perhaps Lowe, wheelbarrow and all, will remain an independent, a sort of ghost of what British populism might have been had it developed a spine. In truth, he faces political exile. The irony, of course, is that his exile was not precipitated by criminal wrongdoing, but by dissent. Dissent, let us not forget, is the lifeblood of democracy, and its suppression, whether through character assassination or the humiliation of a late-night firearm seizure, is an affront to the very notion of open politics. Rupert Lowe may not be a natural martyr. He's gruff, polarising, and at times politically inept. But his story, guns, wheelbarrow and all, exposes a deeper sickness, the inability of populist movements to tolerate internal debate. And when parties become personality cults, when disagreement is met not with argument but exile, we're no longer dealing with political movements, we're dealing with ideological monoliths. That is why this matters, not because Rupert Lowe is irreplaceable, but because his silencing tells us what happens when populism turns inward and devours its own, like a mother octopus devouring the husband and then giving herself completely to her children. So in fact, all octopus children, all octopodi, are born orphans. So let's remember, sometimes a wheelbarrow of guns is not just about firearms, it's about fear, of free speech, of dissent, of losing control. And in Rupert Lowe's case, it may yet be the most literal image of political overkill in recent memory.